Tell us a little bit more about that.
Absolutely. So I founded an organisation when I was about 15 that supplies menstrual maternity products across our region. And about 2 years ago, I got involved with the CWA through that, and they've been absolutely instrumental. So Bangalow CWA, Lismore CWA, and I've just joined in with Gladstone CWA as well. So I love to have a morning tea with those ladies and talk about our community and work together to address the issues that we face.
Excellent. And when we're talking about organisations that you work for, you also work with an organisation called Country to Canberra. Tell us a little bit more about that one as well.
I do. So I've recently started volunteering as a Project Empower officer with Country to Canberra, which brings girls from regional, rural and remote schools to Canberra for a leadership and mentorship week. And from next week, we'll actually be starting a tour out to some of those schools as well, which I'm very excited about, to deliver more of those workshops and reach more people, to help some of those communities have more leadership and education opportunities.
Great. Now, I understand that you've also started a Bachelor of International Relations and a Bachelor of Public Policy. Where do you hope this study is going to take you?
I have. So two of my biggest values are education and opportunity. And looking back on school, I'm incredibly grateful for the education and opportunity that I had. So through taking this degree, really I hope to be able to supply more of both to communities everywhere and to enact meaningful change.
Perfect. One last question. You're so involved with these organisations and also young women and young people. What's one piece of advice that you would give some young women or young girls who are looking to pursue something that they're really passionate about?
My piece of advice would be that there will always be someone who can help you do what you want to do. You don't necessarily have to start it on your own or have this massive plan. If you even have a little plan, you can find someone who knows a little bit more than you do, and they will absolutely want to help you achieve that. So it would be to take advantage of the relationships, and when someone offers to help you, it's because they genuinely want to. So take that offer up.
I think that's a great piece of advice. Ladies and gentlemen, Lily Harrison. Representing War Hope Show Society, Kimberly Tout. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, we've got to chat a little bit during the week, and I understand you're a very passionate horsewoman and who you commit a lot of time to retraining and rehoming thoroughbreds. Tell us what's involved in that.
That's correct. Horses are something that's deeply embedded in my history. At the age of 14, I began working as a clerk of the course alongside my mum at the racetracks between Kempsey and Foster. I quickly developed a deep love for taking home a lot of the retired thoroughbreds that weren't quite successful in their racing career, and I'd put a lot of time into retraining them and finding a discipline they could excel in and then finding them suitable homes. That's something I'm still very passionate about now and something I still do. I'm picking 2 more up this week.
Are they going to stay with you or are they going to find another home?
Well, some of them do find permanent homes at my house.
You also work as a special education teacher at Kempsey West Public School. What improvements or changes do you believe need to be made to the education system so the kids in rural, regional and remote areas have the same opportunities as those that are in the city?
That's correct. I'm a special education teacher. I'm deeply passionate about children having equal access to appropriate education opportunities. I think in rural communities they can be forgotten about and they easily fall behind. Some of that can be transport issues, it can be not having access to resources. I think we need to build those communities up, build their resources, make sure they do have access to education opportunities, whether that be getting quality teachers out into those rural and remote communities. That's what we need to do.
Excellent. And a really good platform around educating people is obviously our local shows. So if you were made your show president tomorrow, no budget in mind, what is the one thing that you would do?
That's a difficult question, actually. Currently, we have an amazing leadership team in the War Hope Show Society, and we've made a lot of improvements through being successful with grants. I guess one thing I'd do, our showground's been used as an evacuation point during recent hardships, whether it be with bushfires or flooding, and we found we didn't quite have enough resources, whether it be for panels to put in the main arena to put horses in or down in the cattle arena. So I'd build those resources to make sure we can actually provide for our community when it's in desperate need.
And look, shows do play a very vital role in these difficult times, so well done to your show society. And ladies and gentlemen, Kimberly Tout.
Thank you.
Moving on to Zone 2 now, representing the Hawkesbury Show Society is Eliza Babazogli. Welcome, Eliza.
Thank you everyone for coming down.
Now, Babazogli, that is not a name that you hear very often. Tell us a little about the heritage around that.
Yeah, so with a name like that, there's always a story behind it. So unlike many, I didn't come from many generational farming. So my dad was actually born in Uruguay and grew up on a poultry farm there. And they moved to Australia with not much non-English speaking. So they set up on the outskirts of Sydney, and that's how I ended up in the Hawkesbury.
And in the Hawkesbury, quite a large horse area as well, that's very renowned for that. You've got a strong passion for the equine industry, you work in that, but you're also part of the Young Professionals of Racing. Tell us a little bit about that one.
Yeah, so the Young Professionals in Racing is an amazing organisation, and it's set up with volunteers. It's funded by Racing New South Wales, so we have amazing help, and it's really about to get the younger folks coming into racing, and we provide events that we connect them with trainers, have guest speakers, so they get that first step into the industry, because it is a really hard industry to crack. It's not often people leave, you can stay there till a very old age, so it's absolutely to get that foot in the door and start building connections.
Fantastic. And now I think it must be noted that during COVID, racing in Australia was probably one of the only sporting events that was happening worldwide. What do you think the future of racing actually looks like?
Look, it's such a huge industry. I think it is still going to have a strong future. We do obviously have the side that's not for racing, but the industry is doing so much. They spend millions in rehoming, retraining and rehabilitating. So I think it is going to get stronger. We're fortunate enough to have a great amount of people wanting to join the industry. It's just about grasping those opportunities when they come out. So yeah, I think it'll definitely have such a strong future ahead of it, because it is a huge contributor to our economy.
And you'd meet a lot of people through the racing industry. Who's one person that inspires you?
In the racing industry, it would have to be Gay Waterhouse. She just absolutely broke glass ceilings for not only women in racing, but women in Australia. She's broken records, and she's done it with such class and composure. So I think she's an absolute amazing inspiration to have, no matter what industry you work in, being a female.
Well, Eliza, I'm sure there's plenty of young women out there that are looking up to you also. So ladies and gentlemen, Eliza Babazogli. Our next showgirl representing the Milton Show Society is Emily Quinn. Welcome, Emily.
Welcome. Thank you. Thank you to everybody else.
Now, I believe today is a very special day for the Milton Show Society and for yourself. Tell us a little bit more about that one.
So it is quite special for myself and for the fellow people from Milton here. I'm the first showgirl from Milton Show Society to be standing on this stage in about 20 years. So we've broken a trend and now we're here.
I think that's fantastic, and it's so nice to see show societies like that continuing to thrive and have amazing young women like yourself coming through. Now, speaking of which, you work for Scania Trucks in the customer service advisory role, which involves coordinating work for over 50 mechanics, but at the same time you're studying a diploma of leadership and management. What do you think the most important attribute is of a good leader?
Of a good leader, I find personally, you have to be inspirational. You have to get in front of your team and know what makes them tick. You can sit in front of somebody and they can go through the flow, and at the end of the day thinking, I'm not really inspired. But to be a good leader, you need to be inspired yourself. You need to be passionate. You need to have courage. You need to have integrity. And you also need to be genuine and real and actually get your team moving. So at the end of the day, I need to get out there. Sometimes with a workshop of 52 technicians, it's a bit hard. You need to give them a bit of a encouragement there. But I find if you have those attributes, you will go a long way.
And in a sneaky little conversation when we talk about leadership, potentially there was some political aspirations maybe on your radar. Maybe one day you would like to become the Mayor of Milton. So if you were the Mayor of Milton, what would be the first thing that you would do to ensure the future sustainability of your town and region?
the Mayor of Milton does sound rather lovely to me. I'm kind of getting used to it this past week from what I can hear. Within our community, we have so many young people that are passionate about what they do and where they come from. I find that I would definitely come along and create more groups that do encourage the youth and the talents that they have, and obviously just carry those through, but it would be definitely showcasing the talent that we have in the Milton-Ulladulla area and encouraging it, if it be through scholarships, if it be through groups, if it be through leadership programs, but we would really love to get out there and get ourselves on the map, so I'd be happy to help that happen.
Well, it could be Mayor Emily Quinn one day, so good luck with that. Ladies and gentlemen, from Milton Show Society, Emily Quinn.
Thank you so much.
Moving on to Zone 3 now. Representing Cobargo is Carmen McGregor. Welcome Carmen.
Thank you.
Now, we've had a chat, and I know that you've had a little bit of a different upbringing to some of the other ladies that are on the stage. You actually grew up on a winery. What did that childhood look like?
Yeah, so my mum, when I was little, she decided to reinvent herself from being a midwife to becoming a winemaker. But it was a winemaker with a little bit of a twist. So instead of making Sauv Blancs, Cab Merlots, Pinot Noir, she made fruit wine. So I remember growing up, I would be out in the orchards with her picking out apples, and we'd see that in a wine bottle. So she made apricot brandy, a oat peach wine, a strawberry liqueur and plum port. So she became very creative in that sense there, and that was, a very interesting childhood for me growing up.
And by the sounds of it, the medical profession is in your blood a little bit. So you're currently studying a Doctor of Medicine. How do you hope to use your skills once you've completed your degree?
Yeah, absolutely. So I first became interested in medicine after seeing the profound impact doctors can have at both a community and individual level. And then further from there, we know that there is the health inequities within rural areas and the shortage of doctors to bridge the poor outcomes rural people face. So I hope to eventually, my 10-year plan is to become a rural generalist where I gain a broad variety of skills so that I can help bridge that gap when there is a lack of shortages, like there is a shortage, of specialists within rural areas, and hopefully in the end we can further work to improving health outcomes and the health inequities that rural and regional areas sometimes face.
That sounds good. I hope you're in my region. We all understand that Cobargo went through a very tough time during the recent fires, and our hearts go out to all of those people that are down there and working on the rebuild. Show societies play a very major role in small towns, and especially when they go through times of hardship. If you were the president of Cobargo Show, how would you work to bring together the community after such an event?
Yeah, absolutely. So to begin with, Cobargo as a show society, we are looking at bringing a bigger and better show to 2022, where we can bring the whole community together and work on further recovery and creating that joy in the community. But I think to begin with, something that we really realised during the fires is that a lot of displaced individuals who had lost everything that they owned came to the showground to seek refuge, to seek that safety. And I think from there, further improving the showground, it's a place clearly of refuge, protection and community spirit in that place. So further working to improve the grounds, improve the facilities there would be already a great way to keep the community thriving, because we saw ordinary people doing extraordinary things. We saw true grit in the community, and I think just further supporting the facilities that can keep us thriving is really important.
Cobargo, I think you're very lucky to have such a remarkable young woman like Carmen. Ladies and gentlemen, Carmen McGregor. Now, at this point in time, I would be introducing our next showgirl from Zone 3, who was Lavinia Evans from Cooma. But unfortunately, we have to say that due to a recent accident that may have involved a skateboard, Lavinia broke her leg and has unfortunately had to withdraw from this state final. So we send our best wishes to Lavinia for a speedy recovery. Moving on to Zone 4 and heading to the northwest of New South Wales from Wee Waa, Georgie Hare. Welcome, Georgie.
Thank you, Susan.
Now, I was really fascinated, and I'm a little bit jealous, I must say, that I learnt during the week that one of your hobbies is welding. Now, I think that's fantastic. Tell us something that you've whipped up recently.
So a few years ago at TAFE, I did a course to learn how to weld. At this stage, it's purely just a hobby, so I'm really interested in making garden sculptures. So last year I did make a burning drum out of old plough discs. But I'm hoping to, with a bit more practice, to be able to improve my skills to maybe even be able to fix up some of our farm machinery.
And I know from our conversations you do have a very strong interest in agriculture. What role do you think that's going to play in your future?
So over the next few years, I'm currently working as a physiotherapist in Moree, but in the next few years I'm hoping to be able to become more involved with the farm, and I'd ideally love to take over the farm one day. I really aspire to be like other women who are involved in agriculture. So yeah, I'm hoping to be able to take over our cropping farm, and yeah.
That sounds fantastic. Now, you just touched on the fact that you are a practicing physiotherapist in Moree, but also understand you have a strong interest in telehealth. Can you let everyone know what's telehealth all about?
Yes. So I work as a physio in Moree, and I just want you to picture this. So imagine having to travel over 400 kilometres to attend a physio appointment. Or imagine only being able to see your physiotherapist once every 6 weeks due to a massive wait list. So telehealth involves using a mobile phone or a laptop to be able to speak with your physio. So by doing this, it reduces travel time, reduces that financial cost as well with travelling, and basically allows people to access healthcare from the comfort of their own home.
And look, I think that's fantastic. Given the tyranny of distance between people and health services, I think that's a fantastic initiative. So I wish you well with that. You're currently the social media coordinator for We War Show. What role do you see social media playing in engaging and encouraging young people to become more involved in not just their local show, but also their local community?
So I think social media is a really powerful tool that, if used properly, can really, really engage the audience. Especially, I think it's really important to be engaging more and more younger members of the community in their show societies. So by advertising, what's happening not only at your local show, but what's actually happening in your community, I think it's a really powerful tool.
Well, fingers crossed that we can keep the young people coming through, because they're the future of everything that we do. So, ladies and gentlemen, Georgie Hare.
Thank you.
Heading further north, we're going to Moree, and we're going to welcome Bronte Marshall. So a lot of our 2020 state finalists have been putting me to shame, and I've found out they've all got these secret little hidden talents, and you're involved in the creative arts, I believe, Bronte. Tell us about your involvement in the creative arts, but more so, how does that assist in supporting your local community?
Thanks, Susan. So I'm involved into local community groups in Moree. We have MACT and we have BATS. So BATS is located in Boomai, which is about 90 kilometres away from Moree, and MATS is obviously in Moree. So we provide yearly entertainment to the Moree Plains Shire, and normally with these performances, our profits, we raise enough money to distribute them to local schools, aged care facilities and local sporting facilities. So they're a really great fundraiser for our community.
Now, speaking of schools, you're currently studying a Bachelor of Primary Education. How do you hope to use your teaching degree in rural, regional and remote New South Wales?
Like I just said, I'm quite a creative person, so I think I'd really like to tap into that and provide some really great creative art resources for our rural kids. We don't have a lot of facilities that actually allow children to get better at their drama, their art, their music. So I think with my career, I can really have a great avenue for that and provide those opportunities for those students.
Fantastic. And I understand you're also the Vice President of Moree Show, and you have a very young show society and a very young committee. And you have aspirations yourself of becoming the show president one day, so look out, Moree Show President. How will you get more young people involved in your show in Moree?
I think with what Georgie just said before is so crucial. So the use of social media is such a powerful tool. For me, tapping into Instagram, next might be TikTok, but really reaching out through those channels to get the youth involved. I think advertisement also is such a crucial thing. We're really working hard to really create a positive image of what the show is all about. And social media is a really great tool for that.
Well, I wish you all the best with that and look forward to visiting Morey's show. Ladies and gentlemen, Bronte Marshall.
Thank you.
Heading to Zone 5 now and heading to Merriwar. Let's introduce and welcome Lauren Eccles. Welcome.
Thank you.
Now, we all go through life and we have people that we look up to and aspire to be and people that help us take a leap of faith. Coming in the Showgirl competition is a leap of faith. Who would you say would be some of the key people that have been your cheer squad or those who have encouraged you the most to take this opportunity on?
Without a doubt, it would be my grandma. Since I was a little girl, she's always encouraged me to be a part of the show, and especially the Showgirls. As the week's gone on, I've understood why. She didn't want me to necessarily be involved in a competition. She wanted me to get involved with a unique family. She wanted me to learn new life skills, and she wanted me to be a voice for the rural women within our societies.
Well, I think she's a very wise woman, and I think we've got another wise woman standing right here in front of us. So, along with wise, very intelligent lady you are, who is qualified and a practicing podiatrist and also having aspirations of becoming a diabetic educator. How do you think we can improve access to specialist services to people across rural, regional and New South Wales?
So allied health within our local communities can be quite sparse. There can be quite long waiting periods. I, for one, noticed that my mum had to wait 3 months to see a diabetic educator when she wanted to make a change. That's 3 months where potentially she had to struggle and do it by herself, or she wasn't able to make lifestyle changes. So my aspiration, whilst I'm working full-time as a podiatrist, and probably a little bit silly, but I'm also studying full-time, I would like to create an allied health hub where there's a one-stop shop for everything that anyone needs. I feel like that can help an individual to achieve the goals that they want and improve their lifestyle.
And because all of you young women here behind me have got nothing better to do with your time, you continue to take on more and more roles in your busy lives. You are currently the publicity officer for Merriwar Show. What's the one key tool that you've done to get people to attend Merriwar Show?
So I'm pretty new to the role, in all honesty. I was pretty lucky that our show society is very young and I was able to use Zoom and telehealth to communicate with our committee, so I'm able to do it from where I live.
What's the one thing you could do to attract more people to come to Merriwar?
Well, the more people that can view your post, see what's going on, see what you've got at your Zero Attractions, you're going to get feet in the door. So that's one thing that I've really wanted to push within my society and create an environment that makes people want to go to your show and go through the door.
Well, I think you've got an amphitheatre full of people that were going to be visiting Merriwar Show. So look out, Merriwar, here we come. Ladies and gentlemen, Lauren Eccles.
Thank you.
Representing Dunedoo, Hannah Yo. Welcome, Hannah.
Thank you for having me. Hi all.
Oh, look, great to have you here. Now, we've had a few chats during the week and I understand that you started to study a Bachelor of Computational Design. Tell us a little bit more about that.
Well, this will probably be a story that I share with both my parents but also my grandmother for the first time. I did start studying computational design thinking I'm going to be the next coder and make the next Facebook. I then realised it was heavily influenced in architecture, and my lecturer sat me down kindly after 4 weeks of trying to draw a straight line freehand and said, "You're architecturally dyslexic and I think I'm going to pass you so you don't return." And I said, "Thanks," and I changed degrees.
So, new career path, here we come. So we've gone from that and you went on to study and obtain a Bachelor of Criminology and Criminal Justice, and you're now currently studying, so I get this right, a Bachelor of Psychological Science with a goal of working in a forensic setting. So, for all of us who have no idea what that means, what does that mean and what opportunities are there for your work in rural, regional and remote New South Wales?
Look, I think the opportunities are endless. Just because the title forensic is before psychologist, it doesn't mean anything but too big. It means I'm still a general psychologist, which is actively my interest is mental health of everyone. But I do have a particular passion shown through my previous higher education of criminology and criminal justice to assist in the rehabilitation process. Forensic psychologist is someone who specialises in the field to work within the criminal justice system or the juvenile justice system or any policy making that may be included as well to help bring rehabilitation back to the forefront, address the underlying issues, to then have members that have been through the justice system participate and feel a life satisfaction and feel welcomed and involved within their community.
Speaking of communities, there's nothing going unsaid that we have had such a tough time with droughts and fires and floods and a global pandemic and now the floods again, and that can test the resolve of absolutely anyone. Sadly, in rural, regional and remote areas of our communities, we all know someone who has potentially suffered or is suffering from mental health. You work as a mental health worker. What's some advice you could give to people for coping and managing through these tough and challenging times?
I think there's two avenues. I think the first avenue is if you know someone who may be living through a personal experience of mental health journey, it's validate their emotions, their experience, and hold the space. You're allowed to sit in silence. It's very uncomfortable, but it's actually really welcoming and reassuring to have that space when you are sharing your story. And then from the other side, if you're the one that may be experiencing these emotions and you are a bit out of touch with the support network, that's where you need to start, is building those support networks. There's a lot of services that are now being funded to help offer additional counselling support, but it does start at grassroots. Mum, dad, brother, grandmother, friend, neighbour, all over a cup of tea. And that can happen at the show or that can happen at, the local cafe in passing. But designate that relationship and that time just to start developing that support network.
I think that's some great advice. Ladies and gentlemen, Hannah Yo.
Thank you.
Next we move to Zone 6, and from Bathurst is Steph Ferguson. Welcome, Steph.
Thank you, Susan. It's a pleasure to be here.
It's great to have you here. In 2019, you travelled and volunteered in Africa and America. How did this opportunity come about, and what are some of the key learnings that you got from that experience?
I'm incredibly fortunate to be in my 5th year of veterinary science, and through this I've had incredible opportunities to travel overseas and volunteer in both regional and quite remote communities, particularly in Africa. So this has been an incredibly broadening experience. I've gotten to experience cultures and different societies that I would never have been exposed to, as well as have a lot of fun.
And you just said about your vet studies, you are studying a double degree in veterinary biology and veterinary science. What do you see as the biggest hurdles facing rural and regional vets in the future?
I think that as the cost of production on large-scale farming systems increase, there's less of a role for veterinarians with our current price model. So I think that potentially in the future, the structure of veterinary clinics in rural and remote areas may need to change to become more adaptable and more supportive and more accessible to our primary producers so that we can continue to help them improve their productivity.
I think you're so right there. There's always cost involved with everything. From this showgirl experience, how do you think you could be an advocate for young people in rural, regional and remote New South Wales?
I think that if we just look at the wonderful women behind me and the lovely rural achievers we've got down in the front row there, we can see some people doing a pretty outstanding job of being advocates for young rural people. I think being visible, I think being brave, and I think upholding your values and staying true to who you are and just existing in this space is enough to give other young people a bit of a role model and someone that they can look up to. And then it's super important that when we get opportunities like this, we turn around and we help the next person in line.
Well, I'm sure there is plenty of young people that are in Bathurst that are aspiring to be just you. So, ladies and gentlemen, Steph Ferguson. Moving on to the hometown of our president, Blaney's, Sally Nichols. Hi, Sal.
Hi, Susan. How are you?
Great. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Fantastic. Now, Sal, many people aspire to walk the Kokoda track, but our overachieving group of ladies behind us, you have actually done that. How did that opportunity arise, and what was the biggest challenge you faced during that time?
Yes, that is correct. So the Kokoda track was something I always aspired to walk. My dad had actually walked it about 30 years prior to me having done it. The opportunity arose through the Kokoda Youth Leader Foundation at uni. It was something that popped up in our newsfeed, and I thought, why not throw the hat in the ring? I had an interview in front of a panel of about 3 judges. They looked me up and down, I think, initially, and thought, now, are you sure you're going to be able to carry a 20-kilo pack? It's an 130-kilometre walk up a lot of hills. It's muddy. There's often torrential rain. Now, do you think you'll be able to do that? And I said, yep, I will. I will give that my best crack, and it was the best thing I've ever done. It was over a period of about 10 days. The weather was certainly the biggest challenge, but I think using a lot of those values, so that being, courage, endurance, mateship, and sacrifice, those pillars that those diggers certainly aspired to and embodied during their full walk from Owers Corner through to Kokoda. And we actually walked that same track in the same direction that they did. So it was something that really resonated with me and has been a huge accomplishment. So yeah, it was fantastic.
I think that's phenomenal. You're a practicing physiotherapist, probably needed one of those after Kokoda, and you aspire to open your own practice. What does that look like for you?
Look, that is correct. So I believe that physiotherapy, those of us living in regional areas continue to face a huge barrier in accessing quality healthcare. So look, I was really torn between my 2 passions when I was finishing school. So I loved ag, loved physio, but then my mum was actually diagnosed with breast cancer during my HSC, and we continued to see firsthand as my family saw her travel up to 4 hours to Sydney to receive specialist treatment. So it was something that I thought was certainly worthwhile, and that I would then go on to study, which I completed in 2017. And I certainly think bringing those skills back to Blaney would be absolutely fantastic. I would like to complete a Masters of Physiotherapy in Rehabilitation Physiotherapy and take those skills straight back to Blaney. I think the fact that we travel up to Bathurst and Orange to receive specialist treatment, and why not bring that closer to home so that people can, they're not having to jump on a bus or rope family members into having to drive a long way. Let's bring it to home and let's have those skills right at our back door. I think that'd be great.
And like I mentioned, home is Blaney. That is the home of our president also. So you've just been made the president of the RES of New South Wales. Budget is no object. Sorry, Brock. What is the one thing that you would do?
One thing that I would do as the president of the RES. So look, having spent the last week with an incredible bunch of young ladies and young gentlemen, I certainly think that really throwing some more money and more experiences into the younger people within rural New South Wales and I guess rural Australia, I think that it's fantastic that to get people active in their show societies and their community at a younger age, I think that is one of the most key things because, we've all got such great enthusiasm. We can draw on the experiences of those around us, the people who have been running shows and have been involved with their communities as an older person or someone who's more experienced in their careers. So I think just getting people involved at a younger age and just really taking hold of every opportunity that comes your way. So, yeah.
I think that's very good advice. Thanks, Sal. Ladies and gentlemen, Sally Lickles.
Thank you.
Moving to Cowra now, Beatrice Patterson. Welcome, Beatrice.
Thank you very much, Susan.
Now, we've talked through the week and you've got a great passion for exploring rural and remote Australia. What's one of the most memorable trips you've probably done?
So I have driven to Ayers Rock, and I admit my family is a big fan of John Williamson, and I saw it raining on the rock, and that would have to be my best experience, and it was lovely to be driving around the rock, singing Raining on the Rock. So that was very good for me.
You're a qualified practicing solicitor after graduating with a double degree in law and business, and now you're working in the area of family law. One of the areas of interest for you is succession planning. And succession planning is one of those things that a lot of people in rural and regional New South Wales go through with farming businesses. What do you think might be one of the biggest hurdles you'd see with succession planning in the process?
So I think one of the big hurdles of succession planning process is emotions. And it's very difficult. There's always different people with different interests, and meeting all those interests is very difficult. So I think that I would like to be a mediator and enhance my skills with undertaking a course in that, and being part of that process to help families discuss what succession planning is, and then what everyone's interests are, and then how we can go about meeting everyone's interests in a fair, equal way that everyone can be happy with. Because I, at the moment, work in family law, and it is a very emotional process. And I have very much enjoyed working and helping people with processes where emotions are very high, and we all come out with a smile on our faces at the end most of the time, which is very fulfilling, and everyone's very happy.
I think that's some good advice there. COVID's changed the way that we all holiday with no overseas travel, and we've all decided to do a road trip and visit you at Cowra. What do you suggest we do at Cowra?
Well, that's a great destination to choose to come for a holiday. So at Cowra, we are very well known for our heritage for the POW camp. So we have the Japanese gardens in Cowra, which are absolutely pristine, and I encourage everyone to come visit. Fun fact, they are dog friendly, which is very enticing. So that would definitely be a point of call. Another point of call is the Lachlan River. We are in the Lachlan Valley, and I personally really like water, and I find it to be a very beautiful place with all the parks along the river there. So they're the two main places that I would really encourage people to visit when they come to Cowra.
Well, we all look forward to coming to Cowra and seeing you, Beatrice. Ladies and gentlemen, Beatrice Patterson.
Thank you.
Moving on to Zone 7 now, and from Cootamundra we've got Jess Neal. Hello, Jess.
Hi, Susan.
How are you?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm well, thank you. I'm well. Now, outdoors, you're a very outdoorsy person, I understand, from equestrian to ultimate frisbee, roller derbying and multi-day hiking. What would your ultimate hike look like?
Well, there's still a few that are on my list. I was lucky enough to have climbed both Mount Kilimanjaro and Mount Kosciuszko, so two of the world's 7 highest summits. I think given that international travel is not an option at the moment, I too would have loved to have done Kokoda, but the Larapinta Trail in the Northern Territory looks absolutely beautiful and is something that I could still do now that borders have reopened.
Good idea. Tell me when you get back. You're currently studying a Bachelor of Arts in Education, as well as being the Policy Advisor for the New South Wales Minister for Education. What does this involve? And if you became the New South Wales Minister for Education today, what's the first thing that you would implement?
Wow, it's a big question. So my role is really incredible. I play an advisory role to the Minister in specific policy areas, and during the time that I've worked for her, that's included everything from mental health, disability, Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islander students, as well as leading things like literacy and numeracy and the curriculum reform program. The biggest thing, and I'm sure my colleagues wouldn't be surprised to hear me say that I would change if I became the Minister today, is to introduce speech pathologists into schools. It's something that I'm really passionate about. And as I think some of the other ladies here who are educators have said, early intervention makes such a big difference. If you can catch kids in those early years and meet their needs, and we know that so many students that might have learning difficulties later on really just needed to see a speech pathologist in the early years of school, and it would have made a massive difference in their education later on.
So true. Talking about kids, what do you believe is some of the biggest challenges and hurdles that are facing young people who live in rural, regional and remote New South Wales?
I think job opportunities is probably one of the really big ones, and I think something that's come up when we've all been talking about our different careers. We all come from really different walks of life, but I think ensuring that there's opportunities for people to stay in their towns rather than, it's fantastic that we've all managed to, go different places and bring that back to our towns, but ensuring that we're not, we've got shortages in teaching and in other workforces, but just making sure that all of that wraps around to encourage people to come back to the community.
Excellent. I think you can all safely say we've got some fantastic young women that are going to make a change in New South Wales. Ladies and gentlemen, Jess Neal.
Absolutely. Thanks, Susan.
Next, let's welcome from Walbundry, Amy Reilly. Welcome, Amy.
Hi, Suze. Hi, everyone.
How you going?
Great.
Now, I read that you're a member of the Greater Hume Shire Youth Advisory Committee. What does that involve?
Absolutely, I am. Great little squad. If anyone ever moves to the Greater Hume Shire, get involved. Essentially, we are a sub-branch underneath the Greater Hume Shire Council itself. I'm a very firm believer that with education and with passions and with everything that has to do with growth, community involvement and individual growth is fostered at home on a community level. And so we as a council and as a youth advisory committee are focused on bringing opportunities to the youth in our region, whether that be for personal development, for educational development, for opportunities to be involved in their communities, because it leads to growth in them as people, it leads to them being involved in their communities, and ultimately it enables them to stay and be involved.
You're currently also studying at the moment, in amongst all your extracurricular things that you do. You're studying a Bachelor of Agriculture and you also hold a Certificate 3 in Business Administration. How do you plan to use your studies and knowledge to support rural and regional and remote communities in New South Wales?
Absolutely. So if everyone eats, everyone has clothes on our back, and therefore we are all involved in agriculture in some way or form. For me personally, I have a very big passion in 3 areas with involvement in agriculture. That's sustainability, youth involvement, and also the Paddock to Plate initiative, so educating people who otherwise may not be aware. Now, for me, this means that I love being heavily involved in my show because that plays a massive part in the education of others. It encourages youth to join and brings initiatives with it that might foster their passions, therefore, for agriculture. And then for the sustainability section, I would love to be able to be a combination of an agronomist and also an animal husbandry specialist. So that would then involve working directly with farmers on an intricate level to be able to maximise their resources, their time, their finances, to give them the best profitability possible for their farm, and also ensure that all of the resources are used to the best of their ability.
And speaking of resources, one of the big things that plays a huge part in our everyday is technology. What do you think, what does the future of agriculture look like with technology?
Absolutely. Technology has a huge future in agriculture, not just in the way that we improve performance and efficiency with ways such as being able to control your irrigation through an app on your phone, but also things like reducing farm time management skills. So if we have better time management on our farms, it will then lead to things such as reduced fatalities or accidents because people aren't as short on time, or it enables better machinery technology, so we're getting more yields to the hectare or whatever it may be in those areas because we've got better management. And also another really big important factor with technology is we're looking after the land better. We're getting more out of it, we're putting it back in, we're ensuring that our carbon and all of our nitrogen and everything within our soils is looked after, so that down the track when our grandchildren and our great-grandchildren are involved in agriculture, they can use the land as well.
I think the future of agriculture is in very safe hands with you, Amy. Ladies and gentlemen, Amy Reilly.
Thanks so much, everyone.
And from Wagga, Kate Webster. Welcome, Kate. You're our lucky last for today.
Thanks, Susan.
That's good. Now, are we staring far enough apart? Because I hear that you have a sneaky talent in kickboxing. So I'm going to keep my questions nice and pleasant with you. I understand you're currently writing a series of children's books and learning resources. Can you tell us a little bit about that one?
Yeah, so I started writing these books halfway through last year, and my goal with them is to essentially provide parents with another option for a bedtime story at night. I think kids really need to know where their food's coming from, how it's made, and sort of all the processes that go into getting it from the paddock to their plate. And it's something that's really overlooked, and so I'm really, really passionate about bringing that education into people's homes.
In your spare time, you've also studied a Bachelor of Agricultural Science with honours and a Certificate 3 and 4 in meat processing with a focus heavily on the meat industry. Plus, you have coached the CSU and Pakistani meat judging team. That's busy. There's a lot of talk about global population reaching shy of 10 billion people come 2050, and there's a lot of talk around alternative sources of protein. What do you think the alternative sources of protein, what role do they play in potentially bridging that gap, that protein deficiency gap?
Yes, that's completely right. By the year 2050, we're not meant to have enough protein to sustain the global population. And we need to really start focusing on bridging that gap. So there's been a lot of research into alternative protein sources such as grains, and the issue with grain is for the area of land that you require to be able to produce the amount of grain to get the same amount of protein as you do in beef is a lot more vast. So although it is a viable option, it's not going to be able to bridge the gap entirely by itself. There's also been research into alternative meat sources like lab-grown meat and things along those lines. However, I think that we need to look into utilising meat resources that we are currently underutilising, and by that I mean offal. I think that we should look into reutilising that and providing it as a food source to try and sustain that gap and bridge it as, yeah.
Well, I look forward to seeing what that comes to.
Yes.
Kate, what's one piece of advice that you would give young women thinking about entering the Showgirl competition?
Go for it. If I looking at myself before I started this entire journey, I was very shy and I never would have dreamt of being up on a stage like this, and yet here I am. It gives you so many opportunities and you meet so many incredible women along the way, and it's just an incredible journey and you'll never regret it. Just do it. That's all I can say.
Well, Kate, we are very glad that we have met you and also these remarkable other women behind me. Ladies and gentlemen, Kate Webster.